So you think, oh, well, gosh, if I get ill, there won't be any me, and you resist that, and that resistance is what creates suffering. Someone who's realized that, like Krishnamurti, can see beyond that and say, well, yeah, this isn't cool as a bodily experience, and yet as a spiritual experience, because I'm not invested in this third density structure, it's okay. So I'm not particularly suffering. In fact, it's kind of exciting because something phenomenal is about to happen, and something wonderful, and this transition I welcome as the ultimate growth. And as I often remind people, death isn't the opposite of life. Death is the opposite of birth. It's an exit where there was once an entrance, and that is sometimes time to go, and that's cool.
Yeah, and as a physician of 30 years, people know when they're going to go. There's been a couple of times where people have told me in the pre-op area that they felt they were going to die in surgery, and it wasn't a fear. It was like a knowing. So we didn't do surgery on them. It's like, well, if you're going to die, let's not do surgery on you today. And
you are a very conscious surgeon. If I ever need any surgery, I'm coming to you.
Well, thank you. But, we were able to operate on them later. So I was beginning to think that there were windows of opportunity for people to leave. And later on, when I was studying with spiritual teachers, they actually said that there are windows about every 7 years that are possible to open up so we can leave. So, it is possible that you can do surgery on somebody one time and they'll die on the table, but then when you get past that window, that they can have surgery very safely. So it's something I learned to pay attention to.
I've come across a similar thing where every 7 years there's kind of like an alignment process, a little bit like a sort of eclipse or something like that, or a galactic alignment where things line up where you say, okay, you can go left, right, or straight on now, very definitely.
Right.
So you can recede in consciousness, you can increase your consciousness, or you can exit. And that does occur kind of typically, as you say, every 7 years, and you can mark somebody's growth in those times because there's almost like a reckoning at that point where through, again, free will, you have the option to leave if you want to say, oh, this is too weird and hard, I'm out of here. Nobody who understands life really is going to do that because they say, well, you can't get away with it, though, because you're going to come back and you're going to have to do it all over again, and you'll repeat the same lessons in a different outfit with a different name and a different script, but it will be the same director, it'll be the same lesson. So you might as well grasp the nettle and get on with it while you're here.
And the other thing is things always change, I mean, when things are really bad, the thing that keeps me going is knowing that things always change and things are going to get better, It's like things don't stay bad. That these just don't.
That's right.
They
get
better.
That's a perspective shift on change, isn't it? To say,
well,
change is always going to shake the dice, so stuff's always going to transform.
Yeah.
So we don't keep it at bay. We say, welcome. Let's bring that novelty into our daily lives.
I remember one time I was being negative a few years ago. I was just thinking negative and, being unhappy and being negative, and one of my friends called me up, and he was clairvoyant. He had just gotten a real rut, and the clairvoyant said, my clairvoyant friend said to me, you better be careful. You're a very powerful creator, and I hear that you could create a car wreck and leave. And I go, ooh, I probably could. We all drive on the highway. It's not that hard to vector that drunk driver right into us, is it? It's pretty easy.
It isn't. And sometimes if we need that hard lesson, we manifest negative events because that's what needs to occur. So to collapse polarity, to move beyond that into a more sort of unitary consciousness, which happens of itself eventually. But if you want to speed that up, you have to understand negativity, and that means knowing what pessimism is, knowing what cynicism is, knowing what violence or aggression or negativity is, understanding them fully. Doesn't mean you have to be it necessarily, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you have to actually live that role. And when you do, you see the sense of it, and you see the point of it, and you see how it factors into the universe. And then you can put it down. You don't have to do it again. But if you
Yeah.
avoid negativity, it will follow you around like a little dog, and wherever you go,
Yeah,
it'll
right.
be nipping at your heels,
Yeah, you got to learn about it. That's true. I mean, you really do. And I believe it's there are times when masters like Jesus and other masters use anger to move energy. I mean, there was the money changer event, and if you study the lives of other masters, they don't avoid getting angry. They really don't. They get angry when when they're guided to get angry and really move energy quickly. So it's not you can't judge it good or bad. It is whatever is needed to move the energy at the time. So.
It is, and that's one of those things where when you look at, as you describe it, a master, someone who's achieved high attainment, I always treat that innocuous behavior or incongruous happenings. When you say, "Oh, this guy is so spiritually advanced, and yet here he is having a massive, fit and throwing his violence around and throwing these expletives around," and I think, well, that's reality. That is positive and negative interacting with each other. I'm more suspicious when you see somebody like Mother Teresa who's like, oh, she's just so nice and she never says a bad word and stuff. I think, I bet she does. I bet she does.
Oh, I think she does. I knew people close to her. she was quite the organizer and the enforcer,
Yes,
she wouldn't let anybody else have air conditioning. She wouldn't let anybody have air conditioning.
But what is it that we get wrong about that? It's like we like to uphold an image of somebody as a saint, don't we? As Western Christian countries, we say, well, this saintliness of like never say a bad word, never blaspheme, never cuss, etc. It's all just nonsense, that absolute nonsense. So I kind of like to see that incongruity in highly advanced spiritual people. And in fact, you might even say that seeing those little funny, weird things creep into people's behavior is a sign that they're not, if you forgive the expression, up their own arse. They're not letting their egos command their spiritual destiny. They're not bothered. They let it flow as it should be, just like great art is not always about positive, lovely, fluffy things. It often is about melancholy and sadness and loss. There's some of the most beautiful songs and paintings and books are about those things. It doesn't mean they're gloomy or bad. It means that they're mapping a very, very subtle and powerful territory in life, and we have to do that in our spiritual work as well. So engaging with all of it, with negativity and fear and anxiety and pain, one has to develop this sort of warrior attitude to say, well, bring it on, because I have nothing to lose here. Bring it on. Let's see what you've got. Let's see what's going on here. Let's understand the flow of energy. What is it really showing us, this thing? What is destruction showing us? Is it important? Do we need destruction in order to have creation? I think we probably do. So let me experience that here on the greatest college of enlightenment in the Milky Way, the Earth.
Yeah. And if you study the lives of the masters, when you get enlightened, you don't get to rest on your laurels. You don't get to have a nice life with, blissful all the time. I mean, look at Sai Baba with the multiple assassination attempts. Look at the Dalai Lama with, the Chinese army trying to kill him as he escaped Tibet. If anything, these masters, look at the life of Jesus. It certainly wasn't a bed of roses. So, you don't get to be happy and blissful. You get even more significant tests that then you have to come up with spiritual protection. You have to learn about, I don't know all the lessons they're learning, but good Lord, it's very interesting to study the lives of the masters. It really is. It's not.
It is, and I do my own spiritual teaching work with people, and people, pay me to tutor them and guide them and instruct them in a lot of mystical and spiritual traditions and show them my own knowledge and whatnot. And they're free to do that or not, it's up to them. And very often, particularly where somebody really wants to dive in deeply and quickly, perhaps too quickly, they'll say, well, what can I expect? How does it change things? So, well, there's nothing in it for you, really.